How to print in Unreal using C++. This is aimed for Blueprint users, so ideally you have some experience using blueprints. I'm using a third-person project. All right, so all you have to do is open up the character class, add this code, and you're done. Thank you for watching. I want you to visualize what's going on in order for it to be easier to understand. In Blueprints, all we have to do is search for print, and the node will be available. It will, however, not work without a power source like BeginPlay, for example. In C++, we will need to start by including something called gEngine, which is basically like the core of the engine. Think of it as the main engine object that knows about the game world. Then we will need to call the BeginPlay function of this class. In Blueprints, you just call it in the nodes. But in C++, you need to call it a little differently. We use a keyword called void. I will explain this more later. Then we will need to call the BeginPlay here, and the character's parent class. In Blueprints, we don't have to worry about the parent class, but in C++, we need to do that to initialize movement and other important settings. Then we need to check if the gEngine is valid. Otherwise, the engine may crash. If it is, print. Let's open up our character class. For each class, you will have a CPP file and a header file. It's sort of like the Blueprints event tab and viewport tab. But in Blueprints, we don't officially have a header tab. To do things, we must do it in the CPP. Let's start by including the gEngine, or engine.h. I can actually show you what file this is. You'll see all sorts of stuff in here. This is just a comment. Then we have to call our BeginPlay. To explain what the word void means, you can see here that void is everywhere. A void is basically a keyword that describes the function we call. It means that the function returns no value. So in Blueprint terms, this here is a void. This is not a void, simply because of the execution pin. So this does, in theory, not return a value because execution continues. Then we need our character name. You'll notice there's an A. This is just Unreal's naming convention. They have other letters for other purposes, but for classes that can exist in the world, they use A. Then we need 2 colons. Basically, this means belongs to. Then we type in the function we want to call. It's easier to explain this line of code if we go backwards. BeginPlay is the function we want to call. The colons ask us who this function belongs to, our character class name. And because this doesn't return anything, we write void. Then we type in a bracket. Here we call our parent class's BeginPlay. Technically, we can skip this, but then we may have errors with our character. This is done automatically in Blueprints, but here we must do it manually. So BeginPlay is what we want to call. Super is just a fancy word for this class's parent. So we want to call our parent's BeginPlay. Then we need to check if the gEngine is valid to prevent errors. Same way you would check if your character is valid before setting its rotation, for example. G stands for global, so global engine. This arrow right here is used for pointers. gEngine is a pointer. But what does that even mean? In Blueprints, when you call the print node, you only see the node itself. But behind the scenes, it's connected something like this. There is a huge engine blueprint that contains a bunch of functions and information. We cannot copy this huge blueprint into every class because that would take up too much memory and space. Therefore, we need a way to have only one and communicate with that one instead. Hence pointers. It's like using the getPlayerCharacter node. You don't create a new character, you just reference the existing one. Then from here, we just call the print function. It will even come up. You can also see the settings that it contains. We're going to get an error like this. Visual Studio will even offer the solution. It will simply add this line of code. Basically, we need to declare that the function exists. It would be like calling a variable in your event graph that isn't valid yet. We need to create the variable, then we can use it. In C++, we must do this with functions. Then we can save. Press this button. And it will print the word. However, it's not printing the correct word. Compiling in C++ is a bit more complex, and you may need to build. You'll also have to compile again.